Hey everyone, welcome back to Talking Cardboard. We have a quick little review for you on this quick little game called Fantasy Realms. As usual, we have Corey, myself, Jerch, and John here, and we're doing a quick little review of Fantasy Realms. If you like this content, or you predict you're going to like this content, hit the like button below, subscribe. We love interaction, so leave some comments, and we tend to respond a little bit too. So without further ado, let's get into Fantasy Realms. So, Corey, you are our resident librarian. You're the one that does the deep dive, finds these games. Where did you find Fantasy Realms?
Fantasy Realms, I feel like it's one of those games that kind of flew under the radar for the last couple of years. It is the second printing of the game. The first one, like I said, I think was a couple of years back, but I just had to get my hands on it for the second printing just to give it a shot for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to give any, first impressions or anything until the end of this video, but I'll just kind of allude to I'm glad that I picked it up. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in our playthroughs of it, we would probably concur with that. So John, how do we even play Fantasy Realms?
At its core, Fantasy Realms is a hand manipulation game, and essentially all you do is you deal out 7 cards to each player at the beginning of the game, and on your turn you are either allowed to take a card off the top of the deck or a card that's played into the discard row and add it to your hand. You then take another card from your hand and add it to the discard row. And essentially the game continues this way until there are 10 cards in the discard row, and then it ends. And you tally up the points on your cards using this fancy little score sheet, because every card has like a suit and bonus, penalty, and value to it that kind of all interact together to get your final score. But I won't go too much into that because I'm guessing we'll talk about that quite a bit here.
Yeah, well then, I mean, we just dive right into it. This game is, it's quick. The gameplay says, what does it say on it?
20
it says,
minutes.
Yeah, 20 minutes. And we were able to run through each one of our games that quickly. It's easy to learn. It's very clear what each card does. I mean, there are some of the wild cards where it's a little harder to tell, but it's a very straightforward game that we picked up quick, and we played it, like 4 or 5 times right in a row, just back to back to back.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah.
So what drew you to this game, Corey?
It's definitely more of the kind of a lighter weight filler style game, and I don't have many of those laying around the house. So it's one of those that you can kind of bring out, like I said, filler in between 2 heavier games, but it's got enough strategy involved with it where it doesn't feel like a throwaway game. It doesn't feel like a game of Uno or anything like that. What really drew me to this game is that it also plays up to 6 players, and that's always a plus for the games. The more players involved, the better for this style of game. And like I just said, the overall strategy, every card in the deck is different. So you don't really know what you're going to be given. You don't know what other cards will play into other people's hands too. So that's kind of fun with it too. But just trying to get the different combos involved with this game is just so neat to see how each card interacts with each other, and just trying to pull off the highest score you can.
Yeah, it was really cool to see. Even in our first couple of games, there were a few like 4-card combinations. So if you know the game Yu-Gi-Oh, that you've got Exodia, and we could kind of tell, well, they could, that I was going for this combination. So as soon as one person laid down an innocuous candle,
the candlestick
and
combo.
Corey would always lay out the combo cards right into them.
And you can't hide what you're trying to pick up. Like,
you never put the combo cards into the middle.
Yeah, but he kept doing it.
To be fair, I didn't have the combo myself, so what
you
am I going to do?
You actually had about 75% of the combo.
75%, but not 100%. Yep. Yes.
And then I just siphoned it all in. And so the game was really dynamic, because then eventually we started to communicate a little bit better and not give away those cards like that. And John, you had to hold back tears, I could tell, because I kept winning either with that combination or without, and you couldn't handle it anymore. So, but the game dictated the changes, and eventually, because the deck is big enough, that combination didn't come up every single time. Yeah. So it was good and varied. The artwork is good enough. John, what's kind of your favorite part of this game?
I like how the suits play. So they have suits of like beasts, wizards, lands,
weather,
flood. Floods. But within each suit, the cards don't necessarily all like go perfectly together. Like some will have penalties that still affect other cards in the suit, but for the most part, there's a lot of bonuses for getting cards of the same suit, and just figuring out how to make your 7 cards work with the suits you're given or the other suits. It's just really interesting, like Corey said, like the different combos you can get, but you also have to pay attention to these penalties and how do you kind of minimize those negative points that you're going to end up with.
Yep.
Yeah, that all these cards are dynamic where you can kind of change your strategy, and it doesn't feel like it's a killer. Like I know there's other games that we've reviewed where if you're trying to change your strategy, that it seems like you're starting back at square one.
Right.
But in this game, it's not like, because cards do play off each other a lot, and you're able to kind of pivot a little bit
Yep.
and kind of keep your strategy secret if you're drawing from the top of the deck, but it makes the game go faster.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and I know that you were mentioning something about that beforehand about trying to speed through to get to the end quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. If you start with a hand that you really like to right off the get-go, you can kind of speed the game along by drawing the top card off the deck because that ultimately gets you closer to that 10-card discard row that much quicker. So that's kind of a neat little strategy thing you can play in this game. And to kind of go off John, what he said about the gameplay, how this is kind of a hand manipulation style game, I feel like that's another one of my pros to this game. It really feels like you're given sometimes these really big penalties on these cards, but you can also combo that with other cards to maybe nullify that penalty on the card. So you're really trying to not only manipulate your hand of cards, but also manipulate the effects or negative effects on the cards themselves too.
Yeah, and that's fun to see how there are lines where it's not necessarily you need card A, B, and C, and it has it listed on there.
Yep.
But there are other more subtle combinations out there. That's kind of a con of mine, is that there were a few cards that were not necessarily overpowered, but that if you had, what was the name of the amulet that you had and then you had?
Amulet of Protection or something like that.
Where then it nullifies all the bad text, so then you can pile up a lot of high value cards. And then it just, that card wasn't overpowered, but when somebody had that card, it made their strategy very clear.
Right.
And it meant that they were in really, really good position just with this one card.
It's definitely not the most exciting strategy, but it is a strategy. You just take the 1-point card, and then you can just go for the highest cards after that. And I mean, it works out okay. I don't think you necessarily are going to win, but it's one
Actually,
of the many strategies.
Well, when Corey did that, he got the highest points we've ever
Yeah,
gotten.
and when I did it, I didn't get crap
Yeah.
That's a good
because he
point.
gave you 100-point candles.
I would say that's probably another con of the game, is that sometimes you can't really do exactly what you're looking to do, or your strategy you decide on in the beginning of the game doesn't really pan out necessarily is how you thought it would. But that plays a lot into, I mean, that kind of plays into the fun of it though too.
Yeah.
So
And then that goes into a pro of mine, is that it's so quick that even if your strategy doesn't pan out, you're not toiling away for an hour.
Exactly.
It's
yeah.
like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you shuffle up and deal again.
Yep, exactly.
It's really nice.
Yeah, but I would have to say, honestly, that is more of a con, I would think, to the people watching this. You have to know what kind of game it is. It is a light filler. That's what makes it fun. It's really quick, it makes it fun, but your strategies aren't necessarily going to pan out every time. So it kind of lends itself to, I think part of the fun is playing it multiple times.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just a one-off game where, I'm really going to crunch this strategy and see if I can pull off a victory. It's kind of more like, let's play it 4 or 5 times and just have fun with it.
And it's not like a light game, like you mentioned Uno, where there's very little strategy or interaction or thought going on. No offense to Uno. But like there is a lot of weight to this, where you can have different strategies or lines. And the longest part of the game is when you're looking at your initial 7-card
Yes.
hand and
Yeah.
thinking, okay, well, how do these play together? Do I want to try to go for this? That's the longest part of the game, is when you're figuring out.
Yep.
So there's depth to it, but it's also, quick, which I really like. And there's strategies you can come up with. John, you kind of were barking about different strategies the whole time. So what were some of the strategies that you found right away in this game?
I think that first hand I had, I used that Amulet of Protection, and at first I didn't realize how powerful that card was until I finally sat down and got a few cards into the game, and I was like, why am I even trying to combo all these things? Let's just grab the big stuff and use those points, because realistically, a lot of the other combos aren't going to give you that many points, with few minor exceptions. But
Well, and comboing it with not a doppelganger, but the other one, or was it doppelganger?
Yeah,
yes,
you used that one.
Doppelganger, yep, that
Yeah.
was definitely the best one. Or the Shapeshifter,
Yep.
just copies a card, super powerful.
And that is
in
a cool
version.
aspect of it, is their wild cards aren't necessarily just, this is a wild, it can be whatever.
Right.
They're themed a little bit.
Yeah. A
Where
little bit of nuance to the cards.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Yep.
Where the doppelganger is any other card in your hand, or the mirage can only be certain types of cards, like weather or mountains or
Yeah,
that's it.
certain suits or whatever.
Yeah, so it was nuanced. I'm going to use that $2 word. In terms of the strategy and relationship between the wild cards and some of these other cards. So I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, really cool. And I think if you played this game a lot, and where you start kind of learning some of the strategies and the cards, there is an expansion for this game now that adds a whole nother stack of cards to the game. And the stack isn't that huge in this game, but it feels like there's enough variability with just this initial stack for maybe the first, 30, 40 games, or if not
Absolutely.
more. But you can add another fairly inexpensive expansion that you can just add a whole nother layer of cards on top.
Yeah, it's a very low threshold of entry, and learning it's pretty quick, and it seems like that it's themey enough to help facilitate people coming up with strategies and things, but it's also light enough that you're not going to get lost in the theme, or it's not going to be a turnoff to most people.
Yep.
What would you say the theme of this game is?
Generic
It's
fantasy.
yeah, medieval fantasy.
Maybe in the title.
Maybe in the realms of
Yeah.
fantasy.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
But I don't think you have to really love fantasy to enjoy this game,
Yes.
though, either.
Yeah.
Because the theme is kind of pasted on.
I would agree with that. John, you haven't really spoken about any cons of this game so far. Do you have any that kind of stand out?
I did have one.
Do you still have it?
Yes. Don't play with stupid people that are going to give your opponents good combos. Sitting there, it's aggravating.
Yeah, that I mean, that is a possibility. If one person is continually funneling cards to the next person unintentionally, and
But in all seriousness, I think my biggest con is that outside of the person to your left and watching what you're passing them, you can't really interact with any other players other than like hoping that a card you discard isn't going to go to them and be highly beneficial.
yeah, that's a good point. It's not very dynamic in terms of what's going on between people or quick actions or things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that, though, too. I could see that as a con, but you don't necessarily... I feel like this is more of a game that you're trying to get your best score rather than not give people what they need, because you don't necessarily know what they have in their hand, what they're looking for. You know, some cards are more trigger worthy than other cards, or combo-tastic than other cards, but you don't know exactly what people have in their hands. So I think there might be some strategy to holding on to some of those really nice combo cards for as long as you can to not give them what they need. But I mean, eventually, if that's hindering your overall score in your hand, there's not going to ever be a good time to get rid of it or call it.
Well,
That's a good-
there is, because that's part of my strategy is, I had the shield that goes with the sword or whatever that gives like 50 bonus points.
Yeah.
But my strategy is, okay, here's the cards I want to get rid of, and now my last card I'm getting rid of is this combo card. Because that way, if I can discard as the 10th card, I know for sure no one's going to get it.
But if you had to pivot strategies kind of mid-game, that card is holding you back from a card slot that you could have.
Or
done
it might
earlier.
be actually being beneficial because maybe the sword comes out in the discard pile when you're pivoting your strategy.
See,
But then if you pivot too late, there is a point where when are you going to dump it? You would literally have to be the last player to dump it for one of those players, or the second to last player for one of those players not to have the opportunity to pick it up. So it's kind of like you want to...
But is there ever a better card in the discard pile? If you have other cards in your hand, you need the discard anyway.
Right, and that's a part of it too. It's all dependent on what you have in your hand.
Like I said, I just look at the cards I want to discard, and the last card of my discard cards is that combo card.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
maybe the card ahead of it's worth 2 less points, and maybe I get stuck with the shield instead. But at least now I haven't given someone that combo until the last available moment.
Especially if you've been paying attention and
Yeah.
Yep.
to what's been played out, because this is such a small, compact game, and you only play until there are 10 cards in the discard pile. And then, it takes 20 minutes, shuffle up, deal it again.
Thinking
and then,
about that with like the more people you're playing with, like by the time your turn comes, there could already be 5 cards in the discard pile.
yeah,
if you're the 5th
that's
player.
that's a good
Or
point.
6th player.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to see what it looks like as you get more players into it.
Yep.
And so unless we have anything else to add, we can go to our final rating. Corey, kick us off.
Whoa, that was quick. This game, like I said, fantastic. It definitely is probably one of the best filler games I've ever played, I would say. Having said that, it's not going to be like an ultra high rating or anything, because filler style games aren't my overall favorite game type, but I'm still giving it an 8.5 out of 10 because it is fantastic for what it does. This one is right up there with the best filler games, in my opinion.
Yeah, and
So.
we don't usually agree on games and ratings specifically, which is good because we don't want to be in an echo chamber. But I this time echo everything that you're saying, that it is right at that same score for Kingless, and I think I gave that an 8.5. I didn't quite give it a 9 because filler games are great, but they are filler. They're not the main substance. It does scratch just a different enough itch that you could have both of those games and pull one out and then pull the other one out and not have the same experience and not really get bored.
Yeah.
And I like that it's quick. I like that it's deep, that you've got strategies you can do. The theme I can, take or leave, but it's non-essential to being able to enjoy the game. So I think also an 8.5 on this, and definitely something you should have in your collection. Yeah. John, finish us off.
Yeah, I really like this game. I really like the concepts of just hand manipulation and trying to deduce what other combos people might be going for and kind of working around that while also at the same time trying to make the best hand you can. I think it's really unique with what it does, and I'm going to give this a 9.
Yeah.
Wow, excellent. And that's extra special because you haven't won this game yet. So
yeah,
and he still likes it.
We haven't switched up turn order, and once Corey's next to my right, I think I'll do a lot better as he gives me those combo cards.
It's the Cortherium theorem.
Yeah.
The worse you are at a game, the more you like it.
Yeah.
Something like that. So across the board, we really like this game. It's quick, it's simple, but it's also deep, and it's created a lot of conflict between us. So I think we give this our uncopywritten seal of approval that you should go out and if you can get a hold of Fantasy Realms, you should pick it up. Yeah, and before we go, I just want to thank you, Corey, for breaking the sexy librarian stereotype. Until next time.